Using the Event Magic Pro software, you can manage the budget, the actual expenses, the vendors, and the invoices for any event. We'll go ahead and open up an event folder. The one we were working with was the Bolton Wedding. We'll go to the folder. We'll go to the Finances section and the Master Budget. On the Master Budget screen here, there are several ways to work with this. You have the Suggested Budget, which represents the industry averages of what they would expect to spend for each category. And then you have your Detailed Budget, the actual expenses, payments made, balance due, and amount over and under. The expense categories here come from the setup screens. This is what comes standard with the software, and you can change these through the setup screens where you event expenses where you customize it. In order to add new categories for your event professionals, they must first be added here because it's all tied together. So if you want a new category for your vendor, you go to the setup screen, event expenses, and you add a new category. It will then be visible here as well as in your event professional list. So on the budget screen, let's go to the suggested budget. Click this blue icon here, and it pulled the suggested budget from our overview screen, but let's say we want to change it. As you change the total budget here, you'll see that these numbers were adjusted. So the suggested budget is taking the percent of the total budget. You can change these percentages again through the setup screens under event expenses for all weddings or for all events, or you can do it for a specific event right here on this screen. You just want to make sure that if you make an adjustment here, that you make the adjustment somewhere else so that it still will end up totaling 100%. So you always want to keep this at 100%, and again it'll adjust the numbers for you here. Click OK, and it'll override or update the numbers for you. So again, this is just kind of the starting point, something to give your client something to look at for what they would expect to spend. Now obviously each client's different, which is why we give you the detailed budget for this specific client. And you can get the detail worksheets for each of these categories by clicking on these blue buttons. For example, let's go into Bride's Attire. And here again, these line items come standard with the software, and you can change it through the event setup screen, through the event expenses. So you would enter in the detailed budget for this particular client for each of these line items, including tax and tip. Once you have your budget completed, you will start evaluating vendors. That's when you go to the event professional section. And here it lists each of these event expense categories, again, that tie to the master budget. And if you want to add a new vendor, you select the category and click the Add button at the top of your screen. This will show you the vendors that you've added to your master vendor list. So you can highlight, if you press the Control button, you can click and select all of them at one time, or you can select one at a time and click OK. If you would like to sort or filter your list by specialty or by price range, you may do that here, and then apply the filter, and it'll show you the reviewed list here. When you click OK, it adds this vendor with all the contact information. Since we have a website entered, it's enabled the Visit Website button so we could visit this vendor's website. Now we'll want to add a contact from our employee list, who will be our main contact for this event. And if we enter their email address, then we'll be able to email them directly from here if we would like. So once you've added the vendor, you can add the vendor's quote. You can come in here now and say for this particular vendor, and if you wanted to just do a total amount, you could just enter one line item and enter the total. You don't have to break it down if you don't want. So once you have your total, you click OK. And this is now updated, and this vendor's been added. You can continue to add more vendors, or you can add more details on this vendor's quote. If you want to go to payment and delivery information, you can indicate here that this vendor requires a 20% deposit, and the due date, and the balance due, 80% due in the balance. You can also put cancellation and any information in here you'd like to about these vendors. This is where you would also keep track of your own information and enter your own estimates for your client so that you can print the invoices. Once you've signed the contract with this vendor, because you would have several vendors that you might be evaluating, and we can add a couple more if we'd like. Go ahead and add these two. You can enter their estimates. Then it allows you to do a side-by-side comparison, the budget and each of the vendor's estimates. Real good overview for your client. So once you've signed a contract, you'll want to check this box here that you've signed the contract so that the actual detail amounts from this vendor will be fed into the master budget screen, into the actual column.